Sometimes I think, like, the simplest questions lead to the deepest rabbit holes. And you listeners, you sent in a toe-in on North American accents. So buckle up, everyone, this deep dive. It's going to be good.
And it's a huge AG topic. Most people don't realize how diverse accents are just within North America.
Right. Like, I skimmed all the stuff you guys sent, and wow.
It's not just slang either. We're talking like the sound of words, how they've changed over time. History's baked right in.
So when I hear soda versus pop, that's just the start.
Exactly. Think about like how we speak now versus old-timey English. Shakespeare, we'd sound weird to him. Now spread that change across a whole continent, different groups mixing. It's wild.
Like a giant language experiment.
Totally. And the East Coast.
Yeah.
Where English speakers first really got going here. Prime example.
Makes sense. They had a head start on, well, everyone else. And I gotta say, even trying to do like a Boston accent, I'd butcher it. But that border thing they do, iconic.
Yeah, the non-erotic accent. It's not just Boston, though. You hear bits of it down the coast, even over in England still.
Yeah.
It's all about whether an R after a vowel gets its moment or not.
So car becomes more like ka.
You got it. And here's the kicker. It used to be seen as posh, fancy talk, especially in England. That's flipped now, but shows how what sounds right is always changing.
Language time capsule. Okay, but East Coast, we can't forget New York. That's got its own vibe.
Oh, absolutely. New York's got its own sound changes that are super distinct, even from places around it.
You say New York accent, you think movies, right? But gotta be careful. Not all of that's accurate.
Exactly. Stereotypes versus actual how people speak. Big difference. Like the New York vowel sounds, very particular.
Okay, but how? Give me the details. What makes them stand out?
So think about vowels before an R, like bird. Most places, that I is pretty straightforward. New York, it gets almost oi and mixed together, like Boyd.
Whoa. Subtle, but I hear it. No wonder it's so recognizable. But hey, it's not all big cities, right? What about places that were more, like, isolated? I read about the Outer Banks down in North Carolina.
Holy toiter country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you get really unique stuff, when a group's kind of off doing their own thing for a while.
Seriously, how does that one even happen?
You had to picture those early settlements, right? Cut off, develop their own way of talking. Over time, bam. Distinct dialect.
Language and where you're from. Totally intertwined. Okay, but moving westward now, what about the Midland? Honestly, that one, in my head, it's kind of blank. Like, what even is a Midland accent?
Yeah, Midland, it doesn't really scream like, listen to this accent, does it?
Right. It's kind of funny you say that, because that's what's got me curious now.
Well, the Midland, it's a blend, right? Think historically, people moving in from all over the U.S., even different parts of Britain, way back when, they don't just lose their old way of talking overnight.
So it's like, what? All those accents kind of got stirred together.
Pretty much. And that's why you might not picture anything too specific. It's more about what it doesn't have.
Hold on. So the Midland accent, it's special because it's not. I'm so lost.
Not lost, just thinking differently. Because it has so many influences, it never got super extreme in one direction. Some linguists even say it's the closest to that standard American you hear about, even if that's kind of made up too.
Wait, made up how? I always thought there was like a right way to say things.
That's the thing about language. Always shifting. What's right is more about what people believe, not some rule book.
Okay, yeah, rabbit hole for sure. My brain's kind of bendy right now.
But that's the fun of it. And speaking of places with a story, the South. Can't skip that.
Oh, the South. Everyone's got an opinion on that one, but you know me, I'm all about busting myths. So what's the deal with the Southern drawl, beyond just talking slow?
Exactly. It ain't about speed. It's how those vowels get stretched, shifted, like to get that Southern hospitality built right in.
Okay, that image I need. Vowels with hospitality, love it. But like, what does that sound like? Stretched or whatever?
Time, for instance. A lot of the South, you'll hear it more like tame. That I vowels really lingers.
I can practically hear it. It's like each part of the word gets its own moment.
And then you got the pin-pen merger. That one always trips people up.
Right, where those words sound the same. How does that even happen?
Vowels, man, they're sneaky. The I in pin, in some Southern accents, it kind of creeps up towards the E in pin till they're practically the same.
Subtle, but I'm going to be listening for it now. Okay, but the South is big, right? Texas, that's got to be different from, like, Georgia.
You're catching on. The Texas South, it's got the Midland nearby, its own history. It's like layers on a cake, accents within accents.
Man, this whole thing's like a big, messy, awesome language map. And speaking of maps, we got to go north of the border. What about Canada? They even have different accents up there.
Oh, they do. But here's the thing that might surprise you. Canadian English is way more consistent across the country than, like, the U.S.
For real. I always figured it was A and a boot all over the place.
Stereotypes, gotta love them.
Yeah.
Truth is, Canada's got this.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency to how they talk, coast to coast. That's pretty remarkable.
Okay, so then what makes it stand out as Canadian English if it's all kind of similar?
One big one. The Canadian shift.
Ooh, that sounds intense. Hit me with it. What's the shift all about?
Imagine, like, vowels have their own personal space, right? Canadian shift, those vowels got a little too friendly, started bumping into each other.
So it's like a vowel domino effect.
You got it. And that changes how a bunch of vowels sound, not just one or two.
Like what? Give me an example of these vowels getting too close.
About. Say it in your head, regular way. Now, in Canada, those vowels tend to be a bit tighter, more forward in the mouth, subtle, but that's the shift doing its thing.
So not quite UBBA, but definitely different.
Way more nuanced than people think. But even with the shift being all over, Canada's got its own little variations tucked away.
Oh, like where? Don't leave me hanging.
Atlantic Canada, that's one. They've got some sounds that remind me of, like New England, if you listen close. Makes sense, history-wise, right?
Right. It's like those accents kind of hopped the border way back when. Yeah, it's all connected.
It really is. And it shows. Language, it never sits still. Always changing, picking up new bits from wherever.
You got me noticing stuff now, I bet. I'm going to be, like, listening to how everyone talks way closer now. All those little differences.
That's what happens. You start paying attention. It's like a whole other world opens up. Right in your own backyard, basically.
For sure. And listeners, if you're thinking, man, I want to geek out on this more, good news. Show notes, we got maps, articles, even some audio samples so you can hear these accents we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely check those out. Like we said, huge E topic. We're just scratching the surface here.
And who knows, maybe by the next time we do a deep dive on this, there'll be totally new accents popping up. Language never stops. It's kind of beautiful that way.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps up our little accent adventure for today.
For now. Big thanks to you, though. This was awesome. Really makes you think about something we usually just, like, do without noticing.
Happy to do it.
And listeners, as always, thank you for sending in your requests, keeping us on our toes. Till next time, keep those ears open and those deep dive ideas coming.